want everybody to just take a second, and I want each one of us to hold your breath as long as you can. Now, here's what I'm going to ask. I want you to raise your arm when you get to where you need to breathe. And when you get to where you need to breathe, breathe. All right? I'm not asking anybody to go any longer than they can go. But I do want to just show us that sometimes our breath and our air is more precious than we realize. Simply because we breathe it in and out on a regular basis and we don't notice how often we breathe. So when I say go, I'm going to ask that everybody will just hold your breath as long as you can. That's including me. And I tried this too, and I'm going to tell y'all, I can't hold my breath very long. So if you see my hand go up, y'all know what he said he couldn't hold it long. All right, but hold your breath as long as you can, and when you get to where, we're going to use our right hand. When it gets to where you can't breathe any longer, raise your right hand, and we'll know that you're starting back to breathe on your own. So I'm going to start. I'm going to do my stopwatch. I'm going to see how long it takes us. Here we go. Start. Everybody breathing? Are you still waiting? Okay. We're going to keep going. All right. Now, the last person was Sister Shantine. All right. She held her breath for 48 seconds. Now, didn't that seem like a long time, though? It seemed like a really, really long time. Now, we know that the other day, there was a terrible thing that happened. Brother George Floyd had a guy sitting on his neck. And Brother George Floyd did better than a whole lot of us because he had a man on his neck and two men in his back. And the man on his neck and the two men in his back stayed there for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Now, the longest person in this room only went 48 seconds. Just think about that for a minute. And he began to cry out and say, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Please, I can't breathe. Now, remember what I said in Genesis 2:7. God breathed into us the breath of life. And because God breathed into us the breath of life, man became a living creature. There's a word called asphyxia. And asphyxia is related to the word asphyxiation, which is the process of enduring asphyxia. Now, here's the thing about asphyxia. It is a condition where you have a deficient, that means you don't have enough oxygen. You have a deficient supply of oxygen to the body. And this arises from abnormal breathing. An example of asphyxia is choking. Anybody ever got choked on something? And if you don't get whatever it is out of your throat or wherever it is, what will happen to you? You'll choke to death. And so asphyxia is like choking. It's anything that blocks the air that goes into you. And so asphyxia causes what they call generalized hypoxia, which then begins to break down your tissues and your organ in your body. Asphyxiation is that state or process of being deprived of oxygen, which, depending upon how long you are deprived of oxygen, it can leave you unconscious. It can even result in death. And so this is what happens when we can't breathe. There's a term that they talk about, asphyxia. It's called positional asphyxia. And what happens is, positional asphyxia happens when, because of the way your body is positioned or what's happening, it's a matter of dying because your body cannot allow oxygen to flow the way it would normally flow. It's called displacement of your oxygen. Now, medically speaking, I researched this. You have a maximum of 5 minutes before your brain starts to die from the lack of oxygen. 5 minutes. Now remember what I told you. Brother Floyd was denied oxygen for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Some experts estimate that he had been dead for 3 minutes, the last 3 minutes, because the body cannot survive more than about 5 minutes completely without oxygen. So when we say we can't breathe, that's a terrible situation. I want to pose a few questions. I got 3 questions for you today. When we look at life in this situation, I got a question. First of all, who did sin? Who did sin? Romans 6:1, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace shall abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live no longer therein? Imagine starting a job and you get caught in something like this and you're saying, I just started. I just got here. So they were just getting started. Now, if you talk about Ahmaud Arbery, it involves a guy named Travis McMichaels and Gregory McMichaels, a father-son combination, and a man by the name of William Roddy Bryan. And we all know the story of Ahmaud Arbery. And then there's Miss Breonna Taylor. And if you ever read her story, it's got a lot of complexities there. She died as a result of the fact that the police had issued a no-knock warrant on March 13th. And a no-knock warrant, in case you don't know, it gives the police permission to enter a person's home without knocking or even identifying themselves as the police. They don't have to knock, and they don't even have to tell you who's breaking in. And they executed the warrant in the middle of the night. So can you imagine being in your house and without any warning or without any provocation, you hear all this crashing, people coming in, and next thing you know, there are people all over your house. Well, she and her boyfriend both were licensed carriers of a firearm. But not only did they call 911, but they also shot back. And so there was something like about 20 rounds that were fired in the house. So as a result, she died. Now, I like the book of Genesis because the book of Genesis is a record of our origin. It talks about our universe. It talks about the human race. It talks about sin. It talks about redemption. It talks about corruption in society. It talks about corruption in high places. It talks about corruptions in all the nations. It just talks about life in general. And now here's what happened. And I want to just plant a couple of things as to who did sin and why does sin occur. One is Genesis 3, verse 1. It says, now Satan was the most subtle of all the beasts that God had made. And I want you to know that it was in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, that Satan approached God's creation by the name of Eve. And he began to paint a picture to us, and I want to just paint some pictures for you because a lot of us look at each other in the wrong light. And so what Satan does is he comes to divide us. He comes to separate us. He comes to allow us to find fault in each other. He wants us to look at each other and find some weakness or something we don't like about the person next to us or in front of us or behind us, because Satan is a separator. Satan is a divider. And so that's what Satan likes to do. He's looking for a place where he can divide us, because if he can divide us, then he can also what? Conquer us. Anybody have times when it seems like that Satan's in your house? So what happens when Satan gets in your house? It be hell in the house. Anybody ever have hell at home? Satan will come in and take over your house. You'll look at your family and say, Lord, is this my family? Is this the person I married? Or are these my kids? What the H is going on? So the question was, who did sin? Because here's what happened. Satan began to talk to her, and he told her, he says, yeah, I know about that tree, but if you eat off that tree, you're going to be fine. And so she went on in Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. She decided, I'm going to take a bite. It looked good. It was pleasant to the eye. It was pleasant to the taste. And so next thing she know, she said, this is good. Did y'all know sin sometimes looks good and tastes good? Anybody been on that page before? It's to the eye, it's to the flesh, and next thing you know, the mind, the heart, everybody's going that way. And so she decided, well, this was pretty good. So she goes to Adam and said, look, man, I got something good for us. Come on, let's get a little bit. I'm going to break you off a piece. And so it said that Adam did eat. Who did sin? The question is coming. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 9, God shows up on the scene. And God says unto Adam when he called out for him, where art thou? Because Adam did what most of us do when we sin. Anybody ever sinned before? I know the way to sin is death, and the gift of God is eternal life, but that's only if you sin. So, I don't know, maybe somebody here hadn't sinned. But the Lord called out to Adam. And Adam did what I would always do when I sinned. I would want to hide from my sins. Anybody ever sinned and wish they could hide from their sins? So when he called Adam, Adam did what we do. Adam hid. Why did Adam hide? Adam was ashamed. And he said, Adam, Adam, where art thou? And Adam said, I was naked and I hid myself. Most of us, if we were sitting here naked, we'd be ashamed. Now, it might be somebody who would be like, it's all right, you know. But most of us, if we were naked, we'd be ashamed. And so God says to Adam, how did you know you were naked? Because in his innocence, he never knew that. He never saw that. He didn't look at it like that. But because he had sinned, now nakedness looks altogether naked. That's how we end up with pornography and all that kind of stuff. Because people have perverted minds and perverted thoughts. And they'll take something that's innocent and turn it into something that's perverted. And so now Adam saw life through a perverted view. Not the innocence that God. That's the thing about children. That's why we try to protect our children. Because children are born, they don't understand stuff that's going on. So you got to protect them and look out for them. Because there are perverted people in the world that will take them and pervert them. So Adam says, I was naked. And then he realized he had sinned. And so then God says, who told you you were naked? And then Adam had to admit what God already knew. How many of y'all know God knows it all? So he had to admit what God already knew. He said, I had eaten from the tree and I saw I was sinning. I saw I was naked and I hid because I was ashamed. And I just want to go to this. Romans 3:23 says, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Not some of us, but all of us have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Matter of fact, in Genesis 6 and 5, it says, and God looked and saw that the wickedness of the earth was great among men upon all the earth, and every imagination of their thoughts and their hearts was continuously evil. And it says, and it repented God that he had even made man. So, we asked the question, who did sin? I got two more questions. The second question is, where are you? Where are you in the thought of all these things that are happening? Real quick story from Genesis. In Genesis 3, we talked about Adam and Eve falling from grace. But in Genesis chapter 4, Adam and Eve, being husband and wife, started a family. And they had, their first son was named Cain. And their second son was named Abel. Now, the scriptures record this. Abel was a keeper of the sheep, and Cain was a tiller of the ground. Abel, when it was time to offer them their offerings before God, it says Abel brought the firstlings of his flock, and he brought the fattest and the best that he had to give to God as his offering. But in Genesis 4:5, Genesis 4:4, it says, when Abel came, he brought his firstlings, and God had respect unto him. But in Genesis 4:5, Cain brought his offering. And here's what the scriptures say. What was the difference? Abel brought the bad. His brother just brought something. See, for Abel, it was worship. And that was our first murder in the Bible. So Cain kills his own brother. So I want y'all to understand, murder's not new. It happens even in the best of families. And that's what happened. But I want you to know that God has a way of revealing things. Because God asked him, where is your brother? And I want you to understand that we're all brothers and sisters. They don't have to be in the blood. That was supposed to throw him off track. How many of y'all know God already knows? My question is, where are you in this life? See, because sometimes we will try to throw shade somewhere else, and we know that our hands are dirty too. But we don't want to talk about ours. So my question is, where are you? Because God's question was, so he came to Abel. He says, where are you? He answered, he said, now where is your brother? Knowing what he had done to his brother. As a result of that, he had to live a life where God said nobody could kill him. But everybody knew what he did. Can you imagine living a life like that? God said nobody's to kill him, but everybody needs to know what he did. And that's how he lived out his life. I want to say that we live a life, the reason why we can't breathe is because a lot of privileges have been misused. There are people that have the opportunity to do good, but they choose not to do good. It creates a lot of discrepancies in life. We have a lot of people, a lot of us can't breathe because presumptions are made. A lot of times we just look at how a person looks and we presume what they are. Anybody ever done that? Not only are they misusing their privileges, but they're also making presumptions that aren't always true. About the rich man and Lazarus. And sometime you ought to go there and read that story. It's an awesome story because the rich man dined sumptuously and had all the stuff he needed. Lazarus was laid by his gate and begged for crumbs from his table. But they both died. How many of y'all know we're all going to die? I promise you that the officer that sat on George Floyd's neck never thought